Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 6 of the video series where I process your image. In this episode, we're taking a look at this great picture from Megan. I think this is a pretty common picture that most of us would take, if not of our own family. If we're a lifestyle photographer, we're probably taking pictures like this all the time. So it's a pretty good image for me to show you some tricks of how I would go about processing it. Now, with that said, I don't think I need anything but Lightroom for this image. I don't think I'd need to use a plugin. Now, I did mention in the last episode about how I'm going to do things going forward. And just to reiterate, because I don't think I was perfectly clear, is when I get an image that I would normally use a plugin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to process that image to a point to where I'd normally send it over to the plugin. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a virtual copy at that point. Then I'm going to process the image completely in Lightroom for those of you that only have Lightroom and don't use any plugins. Then I'll take the virtual copy and I'll process it in the plugins like I normally would have processed that image. And then you could compare the two. Many times you're probably going to find they're pretty close and you might not need the plugin and don't need to invest in it. But then on the other hand, sometimes you're going to see that there's some things we could do in the plugins that we can't do in Lightroom, and you'd prefer to have that plugin for that type of scene. So I just wanted to make that clear. So I am going to still use plugins like I always do. It's just the videos will be just set up that way where I'll do the Lightroom stuff first, basically. But as I mentioned in this image, with this image, we're only going to use Lightroom because that's all I'd ever want to do with it. Now, first about the composition, I think it's perfect. Megan did a great job, and the camera settings are perfect. You want to freeze the little girl on the swing. You don't really want any motion for an image like this. You can even see that her hair in the wind is frozen, and that's because Megan shot at 1/4000th of a second, and it's a nifty 50 lens, an 50 millimeter lens at f1.8 ISO 100. So we did a nice blur of the background. Now the other question I often get is when you're processing an image that's kind of a landscape image, but you have people in it, how do you process it? Usually, for an image like that, I process it for the landscape, and then there's a brush trick, and we will get into that in later videos when I have the opportunity to do so, where I would use the brush to basically brush away those adjustments that I might have did on the landscape part of the image. For example, I might have clarity way up, which tends to make skin and hair look bad on a person. Well, you could take the brush and let's say you had clarity in the basic panel up to 40. You could go up to the brush tool and turn clarity to -40 and basically brush it away wherever you don't want it. So that's typically what I would do. Now with that said, again with this image, I don't think we have to worry about it because the background's so blurred out. I'm not really processing for the background for this image. You know, there's no need to. I'm going to process for the little girl on the swing. So whatever happens to the background happens. Now, what I think I want to do, I always try to go in with an idea what I want to accomplish, is I think I want to spice it up just a little bit. The lighting is rather flat. There is a bit of a direction to it. You could see over here that the left side, our left side of this little girl's hair is just a little brighter than over here, than her hair and arms. So the sun is probably peeking through some thin clouds over from this direction. I think I want to add a sun flare to the image. Now I've done this in past videos of how to add a sun flare using Lightroom, and invariably I will get an email from someone saying that's not a sun flare what you did. And what I think people do is they confuse sun flares with lens flares, and this is a lens flare. You can see that the light is hitting the lens, and when it hits the different glass elements inside the lens, it kind of bounces around and you get this type of effect. And it will usually be in the shape of the actual aperture of the lens, the diaphragm inside the lens. So you'd get this. Now this is a lens flare. You can't easily do anything like this in Lightroom if you wanted to. Most people want to avoid lens flare. That's why we use lens hoods to avoid lens flare. Now sun flare on the other hand, it kind of comes in two flavors. Typically it's just a glow. It's just a glow that's coming in your shot. Now in this case the sun is off camera, so you have this glow hitting the back of the young lady's back and head and everything. And That's sunflare. Now, another type of sunflare is if the sun is actually in the frame and the sun is glowing out in the frame, but you're not getting any lens flare or you're getting minimal lens flare. That's just solely sun flare. Now you could have both. You could have the sun in the frame and it's glowing all over the place and you're getting the sun flare, but it also is giving you a little bit of lens flare too. So it is possible to have both. So with Lightroom, we're going to be doing something like this. We're going to get sun flare, not to be confused with lens flare. All right, now with that in mind, I want to warm it up a little bit. So I am going to go to the temperature slider, and I am going to just move the temperature to the right just a little bit. I mean, just a tiny bit, just to warm it up. You could use the drop down, and you could try, like, say, like a cloudy setting, which will be too much in my opinion, and shade will be even more, and we don't want that. So I would prefer that I just move this to the right and warm it up slightly like that. Now, I might come back and make it a little brighter, although it is exposed perfectly. But when you're doing a sun flare type thing, you might want to make it a little brighter also. So we're going to play with that later. But right now is I want to probably bring highlights up a little bit. I mention all the time you want to emphasize in the image, in your post-processing, what is good in the image, and you want to minimize whatever's in the image that is bad. And the sky up here, there's nothing to see. So there's not much really to process or not much that highlights are going to do for you to bring in any detail in the sky or anything like that. So I'm going to just move that to the right to give me some more of that brightening that we're talking about that I'm looking for. I am going to open shadows also because now we're going to have this sun flare over on this left corner. And the reason why I want the sun flare on the left corner is because the sun is hitting the left side of her head and her left arm. And that's called compounding the light. You don't want to go against the natural light usually, unless you're doing some weird type of effect or something. You usually want to stay with the way the light, the direction of the light already is, the natural light. You just want to compound it. So that's called compounding the light. Easy for me to say. So next, I'm going to skip whites and blacks for now, and I'm going to add just a little clarity. You don't want to go too much on clarity when people are in the shot. It just makes them look not good. So you don't want to do that. And we're going to turn vibrance up a little bit, not a lot. And then I'm going to go down to the tone curve and add a little bit of contrast there. So it's making her a little more contrasty, and I might not like that. So you always could come back and readjust. One thing I forgot to do when I was telling you all these things is lens corrections. We should get that out of the way. You can see how that really brightened it up. See, that really brightened it up. That's why I like to do those first. And you can see that that lens was at f of 1.8. It was vignetting slightly, so it took care of that. So we got that out of the way. Now we could adjust the whites. I'm just going to do a quick white point by holding in the shift key and double clicking on both whites and blacks to see what that looks like. Now I think it's a little too contrasty right now, but I'm going to add the sun flare and then we'll decide later. So I'm going to get the radial filter and I'm going to reset it by double clicking on effect. Now what I want to do is I want to colorize the filter as such. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here where it says color. There's a little rectangle here. We're going to click there. And I want to try to get a yellow-ish color. Okay? Not too green, not too orange. Kind of straight yellow if possible. So that's going to be our color right there. And we're going to turn exposure up. And then we're going to have to really experiment on how we do this, but what we're going to do is draw it out from here like this. Now you can see it's not right. You can see how it's inverted. Well, it's actually not inverted, but we want to invert it, so we're going to invert it. And there, now we're getting this flare. So we have a lot of work to do with it. It's just not good. Now one thing I should note, we could affect feathering here. So I think we'll try with feathering up higher. And I think what we'll do is we're going to really drag it up and out like that and kind of make it more like that. And Now we could come in and readjust exposure a little bit now this is on the lens flare, or I'm sorry, on the sun flare. I'm adjusting the exposure a little bit. And then I'm going to go back to the basic panel and I'm going to bring exposure up a little bit on that, just a little on that. See, that helps match it a little better. And I think I want to warm it just a touch more. So I'm going to go to the temp slider and just bring it a tiny bit more to the right, like that. Now, I could, make it real bright. Not sure how bright. Now, this comes down to, I guess, personal taste. We could bring it real bright and it's starting to obliterate some features. And I guess I want it to glow, but I don't want it to be overbearing. That's just my personal preference. Yours may be different. So just, do it to your taste is, I guess, what I'm saying. And I think that's okay. So I'm going to go with that. And then I think we'll go to detail and we're going to add some sharpening. I'm going to zoom in. I like to zoom in when I do sharpening and noise reduction. And I'm going to bring the sharpening up. It's not anything in here that's highly detailed. So we really don't have to go too crazy with sharpening. So I'm going to leave it around 40 because there is some noise in here and I want to get rid of the noise. And I guess the best I can. So, and as I mentioned in previous videos, what I do is I bring the luminance slider to the right until I feel the noise is gone. Then I'll bring it back. I make note of the position, 75, and then I bring it back. And if you have a slower computer, you're going to have to wait for it to render. I'll bring it back till I start to see it again, and it's at 63. So then I roughly split the difference. So roughly around 69. And that is where I leave it. And we don't have to worry about detail. There's not anything in this image that is too heavily detailed to be concerned about. If there was, I would move the detail slider to the right. Contrast slider you rarely have to do anything with, so I don't think that's necessary. Now, the next thing I would do then, I guess, is to just add a vignette. And I don't like ever adding a light vignette. I always add darker vignettes. Now the problem with this vignette in Lightroom is that it will affect where our sunflare is coming from, and that I don't really care for. So there's no way, I guess, to center it like you can with the on one vignette. I could actually center it or put it off center so that it won't, let's say, affect this corner. So I think as an alternative to that, what we're going to do is we're going to get a brush. I'm going to double click on the word effect to reset it. I'm going to bring exposure down and I'm going to I have flow and density currently at 50. We're going to try it at that. And I'm going to have auto mask off. And what I'm going to do is get a humongous brush. Now it's fully feathered. Feathering's all the way up. And I'm going to paint around the outside of this like this. Now it's not working out too good, so I'm going to turn flow all the way up to 100 just to see where I'm standing there. That I don't care for at all, so I'm going to delete it. Just hit the delete key. I still have flow at 100, but I'm going to turn density up at 75. And I mentioned in the last video what all this means. Density means if you're messing with exposure and you had exposure all the way down. Here, I'm just going to show you. I think it'll be easier for those of you that haven't seen this in any of my other videos. If, let's say, we have density at 100, I'm going to take feathering all the way down to make it more obvious. And we're going to have exposure all the way down. So there is exposure all the way down and density at 50. All right, so we're going to get a new brush now. And I'm going to put density, instead of at 100, we're going to put it at 50. And I'm going to go down. Now you can see it's basically half of what this is. And you could keep painting over it over and over and over, and it's not going to get any darker than that. Now on the other hand, flow is how much of, let's call this ink, comes out of our brush. So I'm going to turn density back up to 100, get a new brush, and I'm going to turn flow down to 50. Now, when I paint with the brush with flow at 50 and density at 100, I get that. But if I go over it again, it's darker. And again, it's darker. It's again. So the flow is how much ink is coming out of the brush, and the density is just the darkest it ever can be. All right. Um, so when you're doing something like a hand vignette, like I'm trying to do, it might take a little trial and error. So we're going to put feather all the way up, and we're going to put flow at 50 and density at 100. We're going to get a big brush, and we're going to go around here like this. And then we're going to take the exposure slider and bring it down a little more, like that. And right here in this corner is a little lighter. I want to darken that. There. That's it. That's fine as far as I'm concerned. And I think the image is done. So that's the way I would go about processing it and adding a sunflare. Now, one thing I just want to mention too about this entire series, I have hundreds of images. Again, I won't be able to do all of them. And if I don't do your image, doesn't mean that your image isn't good or that these images are better than yours. I'm kind of picking images on two criteria. The first and most important criteria is I want to make sure that I could try to teach something with the image. So in this image was the sunflare. The second thing is I want to try to pick people from all over the world and from both men and women. So I don't want to just like pick men from California or something like that, you know. So I want to try to, you know, pick people from all over, all different people, all exotic locations. That makes it a little more interesting. So really, please don't feel that your image stinks or I think it stinks or anything like that. It's all really mainly a teaching opportunity, something I think could help people. So that's it for this episode. As I mentioned, this one was just Lightroom, and that's all I think you'd need on this image. So thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.